Video game development is a long process, and this process doesn't always go smoothly. Plans change and things get cut. This could be due to budget or time constraints, technical limitations, or just because it turns out the piece of content doesn't fit with the rest of the game. Some of the content that was cut from Dragon Age Origins was pretty interesting. For example, did you know that companions were originally meant to be able to catch the Blight? Hello friends, my name is Lisa, and in this video I'll be talking about the content that was cut from Dragon Age Origins. As a side note, there are mods out there that restore some of the cut content. Quinn's Ultimate DAO Fixpack is one of the mods that restores a lot. It also fixes a ton of bugs, and it restores dialogue and some items, so you might want to check that out if you're a PC player. It can be found on the Nexus. The first thing I'm going to be talking about is the Dragon Age Origins multiplayer. So, Dragon Age Origins was supposed to launch with a multiplayer component, as Jay Turner, former Bioware writer, explains in an interview with The Gamer. He said that the multiplayer was causing all sorts of trouble for the single player. And once the multiplayer had been cut, those who focused on the story got a lot of freedom and resources back. Dan Tudge, who was the creative director on Dragon Age Origins, explains that dropping the multiplayer was one of the biggest and most important decisions they had to make. They wanted it, they just really didn't have enough time. According to Tudge, the multiplayer would have largely revolved around co-op. Players would play through their origin and would then go through a multiplayer experience that would match them with other players. While the decision of dropping the multiplayer was a difficult one, in the end it was the correct thing to do. Otherwise, the Dragon Age Origins we know might have been very different, or it might have not even shipped at all. Besides the multiplayer component, there were also a couple of origin stories that got cut. One of them is the Human Commoner origin. As I briefly explained in my previous video, this origin was cut because its story did not fit the tone of the game, as well as time constraints. The Human Commoner origin would be set on a farm in Redcliffe Village, and Dwyn, the dwarf who you can actually meet in Redcliffe, would have been the story's villain. Some work on the origin had already been done, like all of the scripting and plot flags, along with some dialogue referring to this origin. However, no work had been done on the actual areas or the characters. A modder actually managed to restore the origin as a slideshow similar to the epilogue slides and give it an original backstory. They said that they had planned to make the origin playable, but it would be too much work to do on their own, which is completely understandable, and it's still cool that the mod exists. If you want to check it out for yourself, the mod is called Human Commoner Origin Revived, and you can find it on the Nexus. Another origin that didn't make it into the game was the Barbarian origin, also known as the Chastened or the Avar origin. I'm not sure which one of these it is. I've looked it up and I found articles saying it was going to be called the Chastened origin. Other articles say Avar, the Dragon Age wiki says Avar, so to avoid confusion, let's just call it the Barbarian origin. So there was going to be a Barbarian origin, but this idea was dropped early on in development. According to David Gator, the Barbarian character, along with the Barbarian's village, would need a lot of unique voice lines, outfits and models that they wouldn't be able to use anywhere else in the game. This meant that making this origin would be too expensive. Although everyone on the team liked the plot, they had to let this one go. Originally, we were going to meet Empress Celene in Dragon Age Origins as she would be visiting Denerim. It would be there that we would find out that King Cailan was planning on divorcing Honora and marry Celene instead to forge an alliance between Orlais and Ferelden, and Loghain would have discovered this. In an interview, David Gator said that the letter that we find in Return to Ostagar is actually sort of a callback to that plot. In a Summerfall Studios Twitch stream, David Gator talked about how mages originally weren't supposed to know battle magic. Mages weren't taught any magic that could kill people, only forms of magic that could support others. This was later changed because during what was probably playtesting, people wondered why they couldn't cast fireballs. They just really wanted to cast fireballs. And I agree, because casting fireballs at a group of enemies is like the best thing about being a mage, right? Except for the part where half your party rushes in and gets themselves killed. Guys, what are you doing? Come on, can't you see I'm casting a fireball? In the same stream, Gator said that players who had the Templar specialization were originally supposed to have a permanent Lyrium addiction. And this would be a mechanic in a game that players would have to deal with by feeding themselves Lyrium. However, this was scrapped because the systems designers didn't like it, as it would be handicapping the player too much. While looking around, I stumbled upon an old thread where David Gator also talks about this. He mentions that the use of Lyrium would have diminishing returns, but the problem with this was that mages need to use Lyrium, so addiction would be guaranteed. So they needed to come up with a way to deal with the addiction that wouldn't render it pointless. That was too expensive, however. Until late in development, there were plans for the companions to have the possibility to catch the Blight, and they would have to be put through the joining at the Landsmeet. Unfortunately, this was also too expensive and the plans were eventually dropped. This is something I would have loved to see in the game personally, because it has a lot of potential. Not only would it have made you feel the danger of fighting Darkspawn more, it also would have made taking certain party members to places like the Deep Roads much more risky. With a mechanic like this, you have to make choices. Do I play it safe and take Shale or Alistair, who are immune because Gollum and Warden, and see their dialogue during the quest and possibly get some approval? Or do I take Zevran, who could get infected, but can also open all the chests and get me that sweet, sweet loot? Oh, who am I kidding? Of course I don't. Zevran, you can't pick locks even if your life depended on it. I do think that the downside to this would have been the randomness. I think companions getting sick would have depended on how many times they were present during a Darkspawn fight, or how many times they were down during it. But I think with the joining, it would have been random whether or not they make it through. On the one hand, I can see why this would have been annoying, having spent a lot of time building your companion, getting their approval up and everything, only to have them die without being able to really do anything about it, other than trying to keep them out of Darkspawn fights as much as you can. On the other hand, a mechanic like this would have made taking certain companions to fight Darkspawn have consequences, and it would have been closer to what the lore and games tell us about how dangerous fighting Darkspawn really is. And I don't know, I think I would have liked the risk. While I feel the Dragon Age games do a good enough job at this, I feel the consequences regarding your companions are more severe in the Mass Effect trilogy. The suicide mission comes to mind, where you can literally lose your whole team. The other side of this, however, is when you do succeed in keeping everyone alive, it makes you feel great, and the risk you take and the choice you make feel meaningful. I guess we'll never know how BioWare would have implemented this mechanic exactly, but it's always fun to speculate. Jowan was going to be a full companion. The Warden would have been able to use the Rite of Conscription to recruit him after healing the Arl. However, this was cut fairly early in development. Now, I know there was a mod that gave you the ability to recruit him, along with a few other characters, and it even made them romanceable. I looked for it, and I found it, but it seems to have been removed. No Jowan for us, I guess. There are a few more things I want to mention, but I wasn't able to find much more information on them, so these will be quick. Sten was actually meant to have horns like the Qunari in Dragon Age 2. They couldn't do this, however, due to graphical issues. And that's why hornless Qunari exist. At one point it would have been possible to have both Loghain and Alistair in your party, and they even had special dialogue regarding Kaelin's death. At the end of the Broken Circle quest, it would have been possible for Wynne to recognize if your Warden had become a blood mage, and she would have alerted Gregor. It would also have been possible for the Warden to tell Gregor about Morrigan being an apostate. This would have resulted in Morrigan using her shape-shifting abilities to escape. And I'm sure it would have also made her leave your party, or at least give you a lot of disapproval. Desire Demons were not meant to look the way they look now. When the writers wrote the Desire Demons, they were meant to look neither male or female, and would act more like a genie. However, because of a misunderstanding, the artist made a Desire Demon look more like a succubus. And by then, it was too late to change it. Oghren was supposed to make a great sacrifice, and he would die in the final battle with the Archdemon. There is no doubt Dragon Age Origins would have been very different if all of these things had made it into the game. And while things like the Lyrium Addiction mechanic or the companions catching the Blight mechanic sound very interesting, I'm sure they would have also caused some problems, like it probably would have been very annoying to manage the Lyrium Addiction. And if the game had shipped with a multiplayer, maybe the single player wouldn't have been as good as it is now. In the end, there's always going to be things that don't make it into the final product. That's just how game development works. And I am still very happy with the Dragon Age Origins that we got, because there is so much to love about this game. Thank you so much for watching. I would love to know your thoughts on the things that I talked about in this video. Which of these would you have loved to see? Make sure to leave a comment and let me know. And also let me know if you liked this video, or if there's anything you didn't like about this video, or just general things that I could improve on. I'm still very new to this, so feedback is always welcome. For now, goodbye and see you on the next one, hopefully.